In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a thermometer chart and a bullet chart. Both of these charts are about measuring data against a goal. So the first thing and the most important thing is to figure out what your goal is and then to figure out how your data compares to the goal. On this thermometer chart data right here, you'll see is by month. And we have the actual data for the months, and then we have the target. An easy way to figure out your target is to first look for your goal. Many times in business, goals are percentages of increase over what you've already done because of the fact that you want to make them practical and achievable. So for instance, you could take sales from 2011 and use it as a baseline and then say that you wanted to have a 10% increase, and you could multiply it times 10% and add it to that base and know that next year to do 10% better, which is your goal, you could measure it against that number. So with that in mind, figure out what your target is, and then you'll take that next year's data and you will compare it against that target. To create the thermometer, you then select your data, go to Insert. You're going to create a cluster column chart just like what you see here to start with. Once you have the cluster chart, you'll see that looks similar to this. The color's a little different, but other than that, that's what the chart looks like. And then to make it a thermometer chart, you would actually select any of the columns. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to take the actual data columns, the blue, and just select it once. You'll see it's active with little dots. And do a right click on it. Go to Format Data Series, change it to a secondary axis, and then the trick is to change the gap width to somewhere larger. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to just change it to 519. And then when I close this, it adjusts that column so that now I can see the column behind it, and that's what gives it a thermometer effect. You can see this first month, which is April, and you can see that the data is blue, and behind it was my target, which is red. And so you can see that that first month I went well above my target. In May, my target is way above what I actually did, so I didn't hit my target. Now, a bullet chart does a similar type thing. Again, the first thing you have to figure out is you have to figure out what your goal is, and then you have to get your data prepared in a format that you can create the bullet chart, and it can show how you've done against that particular value. Up here, I've decided that my target will be 90% of my goal. My value, which is the actual amount that I did, or the data, will be 80%. And that these are the range where decided I will be from poor to very good. So if I am 70% here, you'll see that that's very poor. And although those numbers may look backwards, you'll see that on the chart themselves, that will make the chart scaled so that it is appropriate. Now down here, I took some customers and I looked at 2011 revenue, and then I have the 2012 revenue. So then I had to figure out from the baseline of 2011 what my goal would be, and then if my target was 90% of that goal, what that was. So that you'll see over here, my 2011 total is right here, and all I did was sum that up. Then to find my goal, which I did right underneath it, I took that amount and I multiplied it by 1.12 because that gave me a 12% increase. Anytime I multiplied it times the 12%, I have to include the 1 or either add it back in because I wanted to show 12% more than what I already have. If I was going to accept a 90% target, then I have to adjust that goal by 90%. So right underneath it for my target, I multiplied that number times 0.9 so that I have 90% of it. So my target now is 90%. I have 2012 revenue. So again, over here, I sum up that revenue. Once I sum it up, then I can divide it. Okay, so then I can take this number and I can divide it by my goal right here, and that will tell me what percentage I actually reached. So my revenue, my 2012 revenues added up, divided by my goal, and I actually achieved 80% of it. And so in here, this number, 80%, would represent that 80% value, the 80% I achieved of the actual goal. So you can see here, this is my goal, this was my target, and that I actually reached 80% of my goal. Now, to create the bullet chart, all I have to do is select my scale up here. I'm going to go over and I'm going to go to Insert. This time, though, instead of doing a cluster chart, I'm going to do a stacked column chart. Once I have that stacked column chart, then under Charts, I've got to switch my rows and columns. Once I've done that, I can come over here and click on any of them. And once I click on something, I can look over here to see what it is. And you can see that the orange here is my target, which is what I want. Once I have that, then under my chart tools, I have to change the chart type to a line with markers for that target and make it a secondary axis. Click OK. I now have a little dot that is actually my target. So if I right click on that little dot after I selected it, I can format it. Using the little bucket here, it will now give me marker options. I clicked on the marker, got the marker options, went down, okay, and clicked on marker options. That gives me the built-in, and I selected the one that looks like a little hyphen. Make it a little bigger so that I'll be able to see it a little better. So I'm going to change it to like 25, 30. Once I've done that, when I close it out by the X, clicking on that X, I now have made that target a little bigger. I'm going to select my value and treat it just like I did for the thermometer. So I did a right click, Format Data Series, and now I'm making that a secondary axis. And I'm going to change this to about 550. Click on the X, and you'll now see that I have the value and the target. Now the trick, guys, to make it right is that you must delete the secondary axis scale so that it will be scaled appropriately. And you'll now see that my value at 80%, okay, this is my target right here, which is 90% of my goal, and that you can see I can turn on the legend now so that now I know when I look at that red, I'm seeing that that value is actually only fair of what I've done for my goal.